Right, well, Amazon's ad take something of a story in itself, seeing growth in that space yesterday. It even outpaced its powerhouse cloud services unit. The e-commerce giant beat on earnings, providing investors with a very brief sigh of relief as they come to terms with its warning of reduced spending. Joining us now is Arun Sundaram, senior equity analyst at CFRA. Good to have you on the show. I mean, we saw what happened when the numbers first came out with that top and bottom line beat, but then that very cautious tone in that call. So do you think when you look at sort of the stock reaction today, are investors rightfully concerned?
No, I thought the reaction was a little overblown. Obviously they had a really good quarter. They beat on the top line, they beat on the bottom line, and even the guidance was good. It was really during the earnings call when we got a little more color on AWS. They noted that in April, AWS was running at around 11% year-over-year growth rate. So that's down from the 16% growth rate that Amazon experienced in Q1. And that really sent the shares south. And I think that's where a lot of investor concern lies. And now I think a lot of investors are worried, hey, AWS growth hasn't bottomed yet. Could we be entering a single-digit growth rate for AWS? I think that's what's on a lot of investors' minds. If you ask me, potentially we can go to a single-digit growth rate in AWS, especially if we do hit a recession here in the US. But when we view those headwinds as mostly transitory, longer term, we see Amazon really well positioned in cloud computing, in AI, and I think it's just a matter of time before that growth rate reaccelerates to that those high double-digit growth rates that we're used to seeing.
And they did emphasize on the call that this isn't just about sort of, one quarter, really taking that long view about where AWS is headed from here. But how much did some of that current commentary change, really move the needle for you in terms of where you see Amazon heading this year and next year now?
Yeah, so I mean, our thesis for this year is really, on that retail segment. It's not really necessarily on the AWS segment. The retail segment, I think this past quarter, it showed some resiliency. We did see better than expected results in the e-commerce sales, both first-party e-commerce sales and third-party e-commerce sales. I think the story for this year is really improving the profitability in that e-commerce business, which hasn't been profitable for over a year now, given the high cost to serve. But now Amazon is cutting costs in their e-commerce business. They're realizing more efficiencies. And I think we're just starting to see the beginning of that this quarter. We'll likely see more efficiencies flow through in the coming quarters, and not even this year. I think we'll start to see some more efficiencies in the e-commerce business next year. So we really view Amazon right now as a multi-year turnaround story in terms of profits and margins, and that's why we're positive on the shares.
So then, in that multi-year turnaround, then do you still see Jassy as the best person to lead that growth story?
Yeah, we do. Jassy used to be the head of AWS. Right now AWS growth is slowing, but if anyone, he's probably the best person to oversee that business as well. Like I said, I think a lot of the headwinds right now are more macro oriented versus company specific, and that's just the truth of what's happening in the macro environment right now. Like I said, I think right now the big focus is on improving profits and margins, and this quarter was really just the start of that. And I think, like I said, I think we'll start to see better profits in Q2, Q3, and even flow into next year in 2024.
And when you were going into this earnings season, we were going to hear a lot about these macro pressures and how different companies were navigating it. And we did also see a very strong focus on really optimizing the customer experience. Jassy expecting the fastest ever Prime delivery speeds in 2023, and also talked about AI's role in things like inventory management and ad placement as well. What do you think is going to be that next growth story for Amazon from here?
I think there's a few growth stories, because Amazon is just it's an ecosystem of products and services. They're an e-commerce company, they're an advertiser, they're a cloud computing company, they're also a large transportation company as well. And now they're getting bigger into healthcare. They recently purchased One Medical a few months ago, so they're getting bigger and bigger into healthcare. They're also placing bets into communication services. They have a project right now called Project Kuiper, which is launching satellites into space to try to provide broadband internet to underserved parts of the world. So there's lots of different businesses inside Amazon right now. But I think right now the priority for 2023 is focus on its core business. And that's mainly because of the weaker macro environment. Because you only have fixed resources, you can't really spread that around to every part of the business. So I think the focus this year is really focusing on the core business, which is e-commerce, advertising, and AWS.
We'll certainly be tracking that as well. A big thank you for joining us, Arun Sundaram, Senior Equity Analyst at CFRA. Thank you. Have a great weekend.